Tonight on Reporting Scotland, police divers join the search for two Hungarian sisters missing in Aberdeen. The family of the women, who are two of a set of triplets, last heard from them on Saturday. After more than a decade of deadlock and controversy, the UK's only drug consumption room is ready to open in Glasgow.
The drug situation in Glasgow right now is a lot harder and a lot more serious than, I don't know, it's hard, it's everybody's using. Also in tonight's programme, more big cat sightings after yesterday's capture of a pair of lynx in the Highlands.
Coming up in the sport, pressure mounts on Rangers boss Philippe Clement after the Ibrox side dropped more points, this time away to Dundee. And how Scottish is the Traitors, the BBC hit show set in the Highlands. A government minister wades into the row. Hello, I'm Sally Magnuson. Welcome to Friday's programme. Eliza and Henrietta Hoosty were last seen in Aberdeen in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Police have launched a land, air and water search for the 32-year-olds who are part of a set of triplets. Their older brother has told the BBC that they spoke to their mother at the weekend when they seemed fine. Our reporter Louise Hosey's in Aberdeen Forest tonight. Louise, what's the latest?
Well, Sally, it's now been more than 3 days since Eliza and Henrietta Hoosty were last seen. The sisters are two of a set of triplets. They're originally from a village in eastern Hungary, although it's understood that they've been living in Aberdeen for around 7 years. Now, the sisters were last seen in the early hours of Tuesday morning, captured on CCTV in the city centre. And today, extensive police searches have been taking place by land, by air and by water as they try to work out what has happened to them.
Police divers searching near the mouth of the River Dee in Aberdeen. They're looking for sisters Eliza and Henrietta Hoosty, who have now been missing for over 3 days. They were last seen just after 2 a.m. on Tuesday, captured on CCTV at Market Street next to the city's Victoria Bridge.
The sisters then came across the bridge before turning down this footpath which runs alongside the River Dee. They haven't been seen since.
Today, police were searching the riverbank for any clues which might help as they continue to investigate the sisters' disappearance. A Police Scotland helicopter was also drafted in. In Hungary, the sisters' relatives say they're at a loss as to what might have happened. It's understood that there is nothing to suggest at this stage that anything suspicious has happened.
Well, the BBC spoke earlier to the sisters' brother in Hungary, Josef, and he says that they spoke to their mother on Saturday for around 40 minutes and they seemed fine. He says they are a close-knit family and they can't understand what might have happened to them. Their sister Edith, who is the other triplet, said that she spoke to them on a video call on New Year's Eve and she said that they appeared happy and cheerful. Now, while the police inquiries are ongoing, they're also asking any businesses in the area that may have CCTV footage from the early hours of Tuesday to contact them, and they're appealing for anyone with dashcam footage to get in touch. It has been a week of bitterly cold weather here, and as time goes on, obviously concern is growing for just where these sisters are and what exactly has happened to them.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Louise Hosey there in Aberdeen. After years of legal wrangling between the UK and Scottish governments, the country's first safe drug consumption room is preparing to open. The facility, dubbed the Thistle, is opening in Glasgow's East End on Monday. Users will be able to inject illegally bought heroin or cocaine under medical supervision. Our social affairs correspondent Chris Clements has more.
Julie, not her real name, has been using drugs for 6 years. When we met her just before Christmas, she'd been sleeping rough for several months. taking heroin and cocaine in this tent.
The drug situation in Glasgow right now is a lot harder and a lot more serious than, I don't know, it's hard, it's everybody's using. You go down a street, you'll see paraphernalia. You go down a corner, you'll see somebody standing taking drugs at the street, no caring, bold as brass. And it's disgusting. And this, the consumption room in Hunter Street, I think everybody will use it, but as I says, it'll be about trust.
East of Glasgow city centre has the highest rate of public injecting in Scotland. For the last decade, clinicians have been pushing to open a space where users like Julie can inject drugs under supervision in safer and sterile conditions. The Thistle is the UK's first facility of its kind. It has 8 booths for injecting, a recovery area, and will be staffed 12 hours a day, 365 days a year. The project will cost £7 million over the next 3 years.
It's hard to predict. Some services in a similar size to this in other countries are seeing up to 200 people a day, but it's really difficult to predict. You'll have some people who maybe come in once a day, some people who come in 2 or 3 times a day, some people may come in up to 10 times a day.
The man in charge says it will reduce harm and infection for those using drugs in public, as well as reducing the number of discarded needles.
We, I think, have had a very strong and compelling case for a drug consumption facility in Glasgow City and probably other parts of the United Kingdom as well for a number of years, but it's really the legal framework that has been the barrier.
A requirement of the centre opening has been discussion with the local community. The BBC has filmed meetings in nearby Carlton over the last year, where some of the residents still have concerns.
Are we going to get more police here to try and safeguard us? Because we've already noticed that there are an awful lot of more addicts in the area, and there are more drug dealers in the area.
I'm not saying it's an illness, right? I'm not saying it's an illness. Some people choose it, some people
it's a life choice.
They come out with it, right, and they know nothing else, right?
We put these concerns to the First Minister during his official visit to the site this morning.
Obviously, if there is an upsurge in antisocial activity in this community, that's got to be addressed. But the community's got to be engaged fully in all of the discussions around about the operation of the facility.
It's a radical step for Scotland. The centre has 3 years to prove it can make a difference.
And Chris Clements is with me now. It's taken a while to get to this point. Chris, what were the legal barriers along the way?
Well, this was first proposed in 2016, and that was in response to an HIV outbreak among that population of injecting drug users in Glasgow. It was one of the worst the UK had seen in about 30 years. Now, the big issue on this has been the Misuse of Drugs Act, and it's also been about the ability of these people to take their drugs, illegal drugs, at an NHS site without being prosecuted. Now, while the Scottish Government was in favour of that, drug laws are reserved to Westminster, and the UK Government was not in favour of it, so those plans were shelved in 2018. However, while they are reserved to Westminster, those laws are actually enforced by the Scottish justice system. So in 2023, the Lord Advocate, Dorothy Bain, issued a statement saying it would not be in the public interest to prosecute anyone taking illegal drugs at this site. That revived the plans, and we're here talking about this today.
There have been objections along the way, and it remains a disputed solution, if you like, to the wide-ranging drugs problem that there is in Scotland.
Well, you heard from the neighbours there. They're worried about an upsurge in drug dealing in the area. The Lord Advocate has tried to address that anxiety, as she calls it, by saying that drug dealing will still be prosecuted around the site. Now, some charities and organisations are in favour of this. An opposing view comes from the recovery charity Favour UK, which questioned the spending priorities here and said it would rather have seen money going into things helping people get off drugs like rehab rather than helping to perpetuate drug addiction. Now, the First Minister said today that this isn't a silver bullet, it's focusing on a small population of people. However, it's part of a range of measures, increasing rehab beds, improving addiction treatment standards, that is aimed at part of their national mission to reduce drug deaths, which we all know that have been very high in recent years. In terms of what the UK Government are saying, it's saying that it does not have any plans to introduce these rooms in any other parts of the UK, but it will not interfere in the independence of the Lord Advocate or her decision.
Chris, thanks for explaining that. Thank you very much. Chris Clements. Now, a new search is underway in the Highlands for yet another pair of lynx, just a day after the first two were captured after being released illegally. The second pair were spotted on a wildlife camera this morning in the same area near Kingussie in the Cairngorms National Park. Police say the sightings were connected. Our environment correspondent Kevin Keane reports.
7:10 this morning, and cameras set up to monitor the site of yesterday's capture pick up two more lynx. They appear tame, normally solitary animals in the wild, but unbothered by the prospect of being spotted. This expert says they still don't know for sure if there are yet more out there.
Obviously we thought it was a possibility, which is why we had surveillance out in the area, and of course we were hoping to have a peaceful night, and actually we had some alerts that we'd seen animals on the cameras, and we mobilised straight away and we got traps out first thing this morning.
Experts believe the chances of such tame animals thriving in this hostile environment was always slim. This was the first sighting of the original pair, now captured in a field by the side of the road.
I don't think there's any chance that the first two would have survived there. No, they were very, very tame. They weren't running away. There was a bit of human activity there, and as far as I know, speaking to the wildlife park folk, fairly easily trapped. Hopefully this next two are the same.
Farming unions say someone must be prosecuted for such an irresponsible act. They've long opposed legal moves to reintroduce lynx because of fears they might prey on lambs.
They're extremely concerned by it. It's caused them a lot of anxiety. And a lot of work, extra work as well, in that they're bringing the sheep in closer to hand so that they can keep an eye on them.
There has been growing frustration among conservationists that proposals to legally reintroduce lynx like these have dragged on for years, and little surprise if someone has chosen to take the law into their own hands.
I'm not going to do a holy Joe on this and start to preach about how it's all awful, because people have talked about reintroducing lynx to Scotland for the last 15 years. Virtually nothing has happened, and the fact that somebody's put them there now shows you that there's a real degree of frustration when it comes to progress.
The first two lynx wandered straight into the traps that had been laid for them. It's hoped that overnight this latest pair will do the same. Kevin Keane, reporting Scotland, Kingussie.
The Traitors, one of the biggest and most compulsive series on the BBC at the moment, is set in Scotland in Highland Castle. But there's a row over how many of those who make the programme are actually based here. The Culture Secretary, Angus Robertson, says he wants to meet the BBC and the media regulator, Ofcom, over the issue. Our reporter, Katie Hunter, is here now. Katie, what's this all about?
Well, Sally, The Traitors is a TV programme, as the name suggests. It's where contestants try to uncover the traitors among the group working against them. Now, it's made by an independent company called Studio Lambert, and it's filmed, as you said, in the Highlands. Now, the BBC has to commission 8% of its hours and expenditure of network programmes made in the UK in Scotland, and The Traitors counts towards that quota. But in order to qualify as being made in Scotland, this complicated combination of criteria has to be met, and that's around whether the company making it has a Scottish base, where people working on it are based, and how much of the production budget is spent in Scotland. Now, a widely shared social media post has questioned whether this combination of criteria is being met in relation to The Traitors. And earlier I spoke to the Culture Secretary, Angus Robertson, and I asked him whether he thought the rules were being followed here.
The rules are there for a good reason, and if anybody is trying to get around them, that's not a good thing, and that should concern the BBC, that should concern Ofcom, and we should try and sort it. We have to make sure that the sector here gets all the work that it's supposed to, that people working here, particularly freelancers who've had a very tough time recently, are given the fair crack of the whip in terms of commissions.
What have the BBC and indeed others been saying then?
Well, we've had confirmation from Studio Lambert, Sally, which makes the programme, that less than half of the production team are based in Scotland and less than 70% of the production spend is in Scotland, but that it does have a substantive Scottish base. So both the BBC and Studio Lambert are adamant that this does qualify as a Scottish production. A BBC spokesperson said, as per Ofcom's regional production definition, The Traitors qualifies as a Scottish production. It's clearly made in the Scottish Highlands, as viewers will know. Studio Lambert said it's committed to investing in the production community in Scotland, and it will continue to do so for the forthcoming series. And finally, I did ask Ofcom directly whether The Traitors qualifies as a Scottish production, and a spokesperson told me, we take the Made Outside London regulation very seriously. We're continuing to conduct monitoring and having ongoing discussions with the BBC.
As you say, a complicated tale. Thank you very much, Katie Hunter. An American judge has turned down a proposal which would have allowed dozens of people in Scotland to watch the trial of a Lockerbie bombing suspect from their own homes. US prosecutors had asked if people directly affected by the bombing could follow the case on personal devices. But the trial judge said it could affect Abu Aghila Massoud's right to a fair trial. Our Home Affairs correspondent David Cowan reports.
36 years after these images shocked the world, a second Lockerbie trial is edging closer. Olive Gordon from Birmingham was on board Pan Am 103, having missed an earlier flight to New York. Her daughter was 9 when her mother died.
I want to know the truth, you know? You spend so much time wondering, and we want to know the truth.
Abu Aghila Massoud is accused of building the bomb that destroyed the plane. His trial is due to start in Washington, D.C. in May. Federal cases in America are not televised, so the judge was asked to allow tightly controlled online access so people could follow it from their homes. But she's turned that down, saying it could affect Massoud's right to a fair trial. The request first came from a group representing American victims.
No judge wants to have a trial overturned or have anything to be questioned on appeal. So I understand the conservativeness of it. I'm not going to say I agree with it or I like it, but I do, from that point of view, understand that.
The Lockerbie Memorial bears the names of 270 people from 21 countries. Many of their relatives are elderly and infirm, which was the reason for requesting remote online access. The judge said designated viewing locations should be set up in US government buildings, such as embassies. How that will work in the UK isn't yet clear. More than 100 people from Scotland have expressed an interest in following the trial, including 32 from Lockerbie. The US consulate here in Edinburgh could be one of the viewing locations, but it's 70 miles from the scene of the disaster, and clearly it won't suit everyone. Olive Gordon's family had hoped to watch the trial together in Birmingham, but they too understand the judge's caution.
If it means that we need to go an extra mile to make this happen, then we are absolutely willing to do that. It would be good to get some satisfaction. We thought we had it the first time, but then here we go again.
Massoud is in his 70s and is undergoing medical treatments for an undisclosed health condition. His trial is due to start in Washington in May. David Cowan reporting Scotland.
Well, let's get tonight's sport now with Lewis and the Rangers manager feeling the heat.
Yeah, absolutely, Sally. Amongst this bitterly cold weather and a busy midweek, it's all talk about what's going on at Ibrox again. Thanks very much, Sally.
Thank you.
Hello there. Yes, the Rangers Supporters Association is calling on the club's board to sack Philippe Clement as manager following last night's draw with Dundee. The result means the Ibrox side are 15 points behind leaders Celtic in the Premiership. In a statement, the fans group called for decisive action by the board, saying keeping the manager in place will damage the club long term. Speaking after the game last night, Clement said he still believes he can get supporters back on side.
By playing better and showing what we did against Celtic, or in other games also, it was not only against Celtic this season. And that's about hard work, that's about determination, that's about passion. So the team needs to show that again on Sunday to get the results. And the fans go always behind the team when the performances are good.
Well, our sports news correspondent Chris McLaughlin joins me now. Chris, more drop points on the road. Could this be the final straw for the club?
He is in trouble.
Lewis, Philippe Clement is in real trouble. There's no doubt about that. The Rangers fans were desperate for him to be a success. He was such a popular figure when he came in, but the results speak for themselves, especially the away form. 11 games, just 3 wins, 4 losses, 4 draws. It's not good reading for Rangers and Philippe Clement, absolutely not. Now, you do get a sense that things perhaps might turn pretty quickly. The club have backed him. Philippe Clement says that the club are still backing him. They gave him a new 4-year contract in the summer, but
the summer was a long time ago. A lot has happened since then. There have been positives. I touched on the Celtic game, some of the European game, some of the performances of some of the players that he's signed has been good. It's not a complete write-off, but there's just not been enough for the fans to really get behind. And ultimately, when you lose that goodwill of the fans, it's a long way back for any Rangers manager.
So Chris, what do you expect to happen next?
Well, there's chat that the new Chief Executive, Patrick Stewart, will address the media at the weekend to talk about January transfer plans. No response from the club today with regards to this statement from the fans. You probably wouldn't expect that anyway. They will be looking at their options. There's no doubt about that. They'll be looking at how much it will cost to sack Philippe Clement. It won't be cheap. But you do, as I say, get a sense, and you do feel that perhaps the Rangers manager has reached that point of no return. And at the moment, it certainly feels like a case of when and not if.
OK, Chris McLaughlin, thank you as always. Now, our championship offering was frozen off last week, but tonight Hamilton and Partick Thistle have beaten the icy temperatures. Jonathan Sutherland is all wrapped up and there for us this evening.
This is what -5 in Hamilton looks like. It will be -7 by midnight tonight. But the big news is that this match between Hamilton Academical and Partick Thistle goes ahead this evening. The pitch is actually not too bad. They've had a big orange tractor loan from Kilmarnock FC helping make things right over the course of today. It is very cold, but the match will happen. In terms of the match itself, well, Hamilton Academical, third bottom of the championship right now. Their match last weekend against Morton actually fell foul of the weather. Last time they played, they beat Airdrieonians 3-2. Partick Thistle off the back of 2 defeats, but they remain 4th in the table. How will it unfold in the cold? Join us for Sports Scene, 7:30 on the BBC Scotland channel and iPlayer.
Tennis now, and Jacob Fernley says it will be surreal to play Canberra-born Nick Kyrgios in front of a potentially hostile home crowd in the Australian Open next week. The 23-year-old is playing at the Melbourne tournament for the first time and is hoping he can keep his cool on the big stage.
I'm going to be the only guy there other than my team who are supporting me. So that's kind of was a bit nerve-wracking, and obviously I'm still a bit nervous. It kind of is giving me similar feelings to when I was playing Djokovic at Wimbledon, to be honest. Anxiety before the match and stuff. So I just kind of want to get the match going, and hopefully I can play well. And it seems to always be an entertaining match when anyone plays Nick. So yeah, it'll be a good challenge for me for sure.
To rugby now, and it is a big weekend for Glasgow Warriors and Edinburgh as they play French opposition in their respective European competitions. Warriors host top 14 side Racing 92 this evening in the Champions Cup. The Scots are second in Pool 4 of Europe's Premier Club tournament with 1 win and 1 defeat, the same record as their Scotstoun visitors. While in the Challenge Cup, pool leaders Edinburgh take on second placed Vannes in northwest France tomorrow.
Like any French team, they're dangerous. They'll sting you for anywhere. They give them opportunity, they'll sting you. Traditionally, good set piece, littered with class players throughout the back line and forward pack. We need to be 100% on Friday night to nullify these guys.
I always love playing in France. It's class. Now playing Vannes looks pretty cool. They've got some pipers, I think, as well, which is going to be fun. So take that.
And just to say before I go as well, Sally, there will be more on the state of play at Rangers over on the news at 7 later.
Yeah, there will indeed. Thanks very much, Lewis. Don't forget to watch our new Reporting Scotland News at 7 programme. As temperatures continue to plummet, Laura McKeever will be speaking to a plumber on how best to avoid burst pipes.
So if the worst happens, switch the water off. It minimises the amount of damage that's happening to the walls, the floor, the ceiling, anything. So knowing where the stopcock is in the house, and if you have a cold water tank, knowing how to switch off the tank.
Okay, where would the stopcock most commonly be found in a house?
If you are in a house, most likely it will be underneath your kitchen sink.
Okay.
And remember, that programme will be starting on the BBC Scotland channel right after this in the next few minutes. Here's where you can find it, and it's also on the BBC iPlayer. Let's get the weather now with Chris. Have you warmed up after your stint in Braemar?
Just about. It was very cold, but beautiful. Lovely pictures once again from our weather watchers. Sally, thanks very much indeed. Very good evening to you. Yes, we've had a bitterly cold day of weather once again. Last night was the coldest night of winter so far. We've already surpassed that. Temperatures at the moment minus 16.2 degrees out Nahara and likely to fall further. So as we head overnight tonight, with clear skies, calm conditions, a widespread severe frost. Temperatures in towns and cities well below freezing. You can see there -4 to -9, but across parts of the North Highlands, maybe down to around -18, and through parts of Central and East Highlands, -12 to -15. There'll also be some areas of mist and freezing fog to contend with too. So to tomorrow, high pressure situated overhead, this little weak weather front moving in, bringing some cloud and some patchy light rain. But for many, it's a dry start and also a bright start. There's the areas of fog, likely through central and southeastern parts. There's the cloud moving in from the west with patchy outbreaks of rain. Given any elevation, that wet weather, that precipitation likely to be wintry. As the cloud rolls in and traps the cold air, it's going to feel quite raw, actually. 2 degrees probably at best. Some patchy rain pushing in towards the west coast, as I mentioned, with a breeze picking up from a southerly direction. The sunshine holding on in the northeast, Aberdeenshire, Inverness, the far north, but still quite cold despite any sunshine overhead. And then looking ahead through the afternoon for anyone hill walking or climbing, these temperatures here actually, summit temperatures are around about 3,000 feet actually. In the glens, it will be colder than that, so you'll be climbing out of the cold and the temperatures will actually be rising. Across the eastern ranges, we'll hold on to the brighter skies for longer, but again, the chance of a few wintry showers across the border hills later on. As we head in towards tomorrow evening, that cloud still with us, largely dry, not as cold as last night or indeed this coming night. Temperatures there in towns and cities, but still sub-zero across parts of the far north and the northeast. That takes us to Sunday, and we've got a lot of cloud around, bit of sunshine, the best of that in the northeast, and a warm front bringing some patchy outbreaks of rain across the Highlands and Islands. The wind strengthening from the south once again, and the temperatures climbing. So on Sunday, 5 to 10 Celsius, and that is a sign of things to come as we head through towards next week, because we've now got a southerly wind or a southwesterly, bringing in much milder air. And that could well lead to a rapid thaw. Certainly where we've got the snow on the ground, we're likely to see some issues with flooding around Speyside, for example. But you can see the week ahead, well, much milder than what we're used to, 10, 11, 12 degrees, and with high pressure nearby, a bit of sunshine too. That's the forecast for now.
Thanks very much indeed, Chris. And McAlpine will be here with your late news at around 10:30 tonight. But until then, from everyone in the team, do enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.